You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And once again, we're your hosts for this show. And for once, we said that we were going to be on Sunday night. And we are on. Yes, we're not moving the show like 500,000 times or anything, which is really good. That always helps, right?
All right.
I know that gets a little bit frustrating, I should say. But yeah, I saw Ted and Blue were on earlier. David actually joins us now. Hello, gentlemen. It's Star Wars Day. We got David right from the beginning.
Hey, my God.
Yeah, so this ought to be an interesting show, and I'm starting to see this like top fan badge now appearing in some of the chats, which is kind of a cool thing. I don't know when that rolled out, to be honest. I mean, I'm glad it did. I remember reading something about, with YouTube about it, but I don't know. We didn't come here to talk about that. We came here to talk about Star Wars. And when we say the top 5 wasted characters, we're not talking about alcohol or drug consumption.
Although that would be interesting.
That would be interesting. But I think the Death Sticks dude would probably win that one.
Well, yeah, maybe. It was that. I don't know. Some of the people in Jabba's palace were kind of wasted. So, hey.
Yeah, that's true. And you also got to look at the cantina.
Yep.
Tatooine. So there is a lot of that. And I mean, who knows? There's I think you're right though. Well, Lando, I'm sure Lando probably consumed his fair share or whatever.
Yes. Mr. Colt 45 himself.
That's right. But what we're talking about is characters who we felt were wasted. Doesn't sound
circular direction, man.
Like that was supposed to be
underutilized characters is what he's trying to say.
Yes, thank you. That's a good one. Underutilized characters or characters that had an opportunity to not even so much just underutilized. Well, I guess you could say it that way, because when you look at some of these characters that, especially the ones we have on the list, and again, we probably could have done a top 10, even a top 20 on this, because there were a lot of characters that were actually underutilized, or maybe they were in a couple of scenes or something, or more so, because I'm trying to think beyond the underutilized part. There's also times where they did have a big part in whatever movie they were in, or book or comic or whatever. I think actually all of our choices are from the movies this time, though. But basically, I think a lot of what you find is that you might have a character that's in a lot of scenes, but they don't fully flesh them out. And I mean, I guess maybe you can classify all that as underutilized as well. I'm basically arguing against my own point here. So, I mean, we'll go with that.
These are the normal conversations that take place in Eric's head.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm just having them before you. I'm my own co-host right now. Let's just put it that way. So David says, those witches and Acolyte were clearly wasted singing that song.
Yeah. It's funny. We were just talking about them in a completely different context.
We were. It was a completely different context, but we were referencing that scene. And actually the Acolyte in general.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think that in a lot of cases, and again, you can go beyond even into the Disney Plus shows. You could almost even go into the comics. Like, for instance, one underutilized character that is not on our list, I think, would be Chrysanthemum. Because he's somebody that he pops up in the comic books. Then they finally bring him into, I think it was a Book of Boba Fett, right?
Yep, live action.
Yeah. They bring him into that. And it's not that he didn't play. See, he would be, when I was struggling with the underutilized part, that's where I would say that for the story, he probably was utilized correctly. But the problem is, I felt that he could have been in maybe more projects. Like they could have brought him into more stuff.
So what you're saying is there's a difference between underutilized in a sense of like if you're a brand new character that's being brought in, which most of these characters that we're going to discuss tonight generally are, that's one thing. It's another thing when their reputation precedes themselves and you're bringing them out and then you don't really utilize them because of their name carries weight. So
Right.
Black Chrysanthemum is another one of those because he's like in the comic books, he's feared. In a lot of novels, he's feared. He's huge. He's menacing. And then you finally see him, and you don't get much of him. It's like, well, what'd you give it to us for if you're not really going to use him?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of those things where if you're
Someone's like
going to
a weird
bring in
cameo,
somebody that they did not waste or underutilize was Thrawn.
right?
But that's like the flip side of what you're talking about, right?
Correct.
Like if
Correct.
you have somebody, like Thrawn, you actually bring them in and then you only have them in a couple of scenes of some show and then you don't do anything else with them. And again, I mean, you do have to serve the story. I mean, there is the element where you can't just do the fan service thing like, oh, look, a cool character, let's put him in every scene.
Right.
But
Unless it's for the purpose of foreshadowing or you're introducing them because you're going to come back to them. Like that, I would understand. Like if you, let's say you were doing something and you show like Vader and Palpatine are in the forefront, they're the main characters. But let's just say Vader has a quick meeting and you see in the meeting he's talking with Thrawn. And it's like, holy crap, Thrawn's in the room. You're not going to see him in this movie, but okay, he may be a pivotal character in the next film. That might make more sense.
right, right,
But if you just show
exactly.
him and you just never show him again, it's kind of like, well, besides it being a cameo, it's kind of like, all right, now what?
There's really no point.
All right.
And I mean, I think that that's the biggest problem is that a lot of times, and again, you do have a plethora of these characters, and you have to balance them, right? Because you do have to serve the story. I mean, you can't again, just because somebody is cool or interesting or maybe they're beloved because they come
Mm-hmm.
from the expanded universe or something, you can't just all of a sudden bring them in and then just shoehorn them into every scene and put them in every project and all that because again, now that's something the marketing department might do. But for
Yeah.
something like this, yes, absolutely. Now David basically says first on the list of wasted characters, Donald Glover. Never should have been casted. They should have left him in the MCU.
Well, see, now you're confusing because Donald Glover is the actor, not the character. If you're talking about Lando, that's a different thing.
Well, and I think that also the different tone of what do we mean by wasted? You know, it's sort of like, are you
He
saying
just
that?
wants a chance to bag on Donald Glover because he
Well,
doesn't like
yeah,
him
but
as
I
an
mean, what
actor.
I think he's saying is that it's like a wasted opportunity. They wasted the opportunity to cast Lando on Donald Glover versus somebody he would have preferred. And that's
Correct.
not what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about something completely different. So, in the interest of that, maybe we should just get into this list
Yeah, so that they can
so that
kind of
people, yeah,
get
can
the groove.
right get an understanding of what we're talking about. All right. So, first on the list, number 5, somebody we both talked about a lot. Something that not a whole lot of people talk about this. Like this character is somebody that's very rarely in the conversation. But that's DJ.
Mm-hmm.
DJ from The Last Jedi. And I remember the big deal that everybody made about Benicio del Toro being
Yep.
in Star Wars and all the speculation like, oh, he's going to be a Sith Lord or he's going to,
Mm-hmm.
there's just like all this stuff that was surrounding him. This whole mystery was shrouding him, and everybody had speculation and they were sitting there going, okay, is he going to, maybe he's like a dark Jedi or a gray Jedi or something. I mean, just everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up Now, when I found out that he was going to be a slicer, that was cool because that's the first canonical reference of that. The slicer, basically like a hacker, has been all through the expanded universe. I mean, you see that all the time. That was like one of the biggest things was the whole slicer. So to bring in a slicer to canon and actually have it in the movies, that part I thought was cool. And you could argue, I know if Ronaldo were watching this, he would argue this. You could argue that the utilization that he had in that movie was probably fitting to the story. He was really to get the characters from point A to B and then betray them. Like that was like the big reveal, right? That he's kind of, even though he basically told everybody he was working both sides, you know, I think that that's just one of those deals where everybody, I don't know, expected. But the reason why we say that he was wasted is because, and again, this goes back to something that I've said before, where just because you create a super cool character does not mean you have to put him in every scene. However, I think that he should have played a more pivotal role, and they could have spaced out a little bit his whole betrayal because it just happened so quickly.
Yeah. My biggest, I have a lot of issues with this ever since.
Well, you didn't like the stuttering part, I know that, and I wasn't really nuts about that either. I think that they,
yeah,
that might have been his idea.
Terrible idea, but and I get it. You want to, because it kind of made him look bumbling in a way,
right?
Because the way they kind of portray. So here's the big thing. Number one, they were trying to find this whole find the code cracker. Like he's this guy that you gotta find. Like he's the monk of, or the be all end all of code crackers, right? Maz Kanata sends them on this little mission, and you got to find him. He's going to be at this place. That's how we get to Cancel Bite. And the whole thing is, one, the whole stuttering thing just kind of makes him aloof. It doesn't make you take him seriously. Two, you have him kind of playing almost like this Jack Sparrow type character. The way he walks, the way he's kind of like, you know, how he casually says certain things. You know, it's just almost like he's playing someone else. He doesn't feel like his own individual character to me. And that bothered me. And then the other thing is that he really didn't add, for someone who has the range of a Benicio del Toro, it's like they underutilized his range. It's almost like if you got Denzel to play this role, so like, you know, it's no.
Well, it's like Vin Diesel playing
I was
Groot.
just about to say that. I was like, here's one for David. It's almost getting Vin Diesel to do the voice of Groot. Like, so, like, it's such a waste.
Well, and I think that, again, this is where the waste comes from, is that given that you had this actor who has a great range, who's actually directed movies.
Yeah.
Of course, his brother's name, Guillermo del Toro. He's the real, like, actual director. But Benicio's done some stuff. And I remember, you know, it's funny because he came on my radar after, it's funny because we just had the 30th anniversary of Clueless. And they re-released it in theaters. I went and saw it because Clueless is actually one of my favorite comedies of all time. I mean, I love Clueless. And I basically, like, I think in the original theatrical run back in 95, I must have seen it 11 or 12 times. It's just one of those movies that I just latched onto. And then, of course, they released it in 4K on Blu-ray. I bring all this up because the next movie that Alicia Silverstone did was a movie called Excess Baggage with Benicio del Toro, and it was a complete opposite. It was kind of like a heisty type of film with a kidnapping angle, and it was just a completely different movie in tone and everything. I think it might have actually not been the best choice for her, but I say that because obviously, I mean, I had always known her as the girl that was in the Aerosmith videos. And then when I found out that she was starring in this movie called Clueless, I'm like, really? The Aerosmith chick? But
That's hilarious.
But I mean, the thing is, once I saw that and I loved it so much, I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to her next movie, right? So she puts out Excess Baggage. It co-stars Benicio del Toro. He was actually brilliant in it. Now, when she then starred in a movie called Blast from the Past with Brendan Fraser, that was a little bit more in tone with what you would have expected. And look, she has a range because before she did Clueless, she was in, I think it was just called The Babysitter or something like that with Carrie Elwes. And she played like this psychotic girl, kind of like a Hand That Rocks the Cradle type of thing, where she gets into this with this family, seduces a husband. She's like this psychotic killer or whatever. It was really, really good movie. So she has a range, but Del Toro, that was what put him on my radar, was that Excess Baggage movie. And then, I follow a lot of his movies over the years. And so, yeah, when we found out that he was going to be in The Last Jedi, number one, that's when all the speculation hit. And then number two, when we found out what he was going to actually be, I was expecting this grandiose thing. Because remember, when we first saw The Last Jedi, we thought that the code breaker was that dude in the white suit that was sitting at the table or whatever. Which, of course, is what we were supposed to think. But it's just like, yeah, and then, Del Toro comes on with DJ, and you're like, what is this? All right, now, David just chats in real quick. Daryl and I were just talking about Clueless, LOL.
Yep. And the thing is that, so Benicio del Toro, like, I'm more familiar with more of his gritty action stuff like Sekiro.
Well, that's kind of what Excess Baggage was like. That's why it was such a stark contrast to Clueless, because you'd think that Alicia's next movie, maybe not exactly that range, but I mean, this was like a really gritty, just like downer of a movie, man. I mean, it was good. I mean, it was really good. And she wasn't even really the star.
Yeah, but like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, Sekiro is like, gritty. It's drug mules. I mean, you're talking about the Colombian. I mean, it's just the whole cartel, like that whole type of world. And then you also see him in other films. Like, I forgot that he actually played. So I was looking up, like, he played the Collector in Infinity War.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So, so like and that's what I mean by like range, right?
He's got a range.
He's got a range. And so that's where I'm kind of like, man, like, you want that guy. And then you get, you skippity pop, and yep, and there we go. And it's like, what?
Man, I forgot about that line.
Yeah, I'm just like, it's like Pootie Tang or something like that. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's like the 12-year-old wrote that.
Yeah,
and
like,
it's just,
oh my God, like, get me out of here.
But, and what was sad is that the idea of that character was really cool. Somebody who comes in, befriends them. The whole concept of that was really good.
And that's the plight of Last Jedi. It's like, great ideas, horrible execution.
Yeah, that's probably a good way. If we had to sum it up in like one sentence, that would be it. Well, speaking of The Last Jedi, look, our next entry on this list, our number 4, basically comes from the same, well, he really comes from the whole sequel trilogy, but we really see him in The Last Jedi, and that's Snoke. Snoke is another character that's totally just wasted, not even underutilized. This one, I would say, would be a complete waste. That's the reason why we chose that term.
Mm-hmm.
Because they built him up in The Force Awakens to be this really cool, mysterious character. And then in The Last Jedi, he was like really powerful, and you're just like, all right, now we're about to see some stuff. Now, granted, I get why they killed him off, but it's just the way that they did everything that just seemed a little, again, it was rushed, number one. I felt that if he was going to die, it should have been a 9, not 8.
Correct. Yeah.
And then, and just a lot of, like, we didn't really find anything out about him. It's another example of, you're introducing us to a character, you're getting us invested in the character, but then you don't reveal anything about the character.
Yeah, exactly. Because here's my biggest gripes with Snoke. And there are, quite a few. But one, we don't know like where he came from and how he even assumed power over the First Order in the first place. Like he just already was in power. It's like, okay, well, you got to at least tell us where he comes from or something, right? Then on top of that, you mean to tell me, well, this guy was able to pull Kylo Ren away from Luke. So that's no easy feat. I mean, you gotta kind of have to be kind of really conniving and powerful enough to, because you're dealing with like the Force family is basically what I'm calling them. So how powerful is he and how cunning is he? We don't get the chance to see that. We really don't get the chance to see the magnitude of what Snoke could actually do. Now, granted, in Empire Strikes Back, they talked about the Emperor a lot, and the Emperor. And so, like, we kind of see the hologram of him, Vader's, kneeling on the little pad, and he's talking to him. And okay, but you're foreshadowing. But then at least in Return of the Jedi, like you see, and then you hear Yoda talking about it. So at least in Return of the Jedi, you do get a chance to see, like, oh, this is why Yoda was saying this. Makes sense.
Well, but even more because I was going to bring that up too, because that's usually the counter that people have, right? Well, we didn't have enough info about the Emperor, but it was a slow burn because in episode 4, he was mentioned.
Mhm.
So you get the sense of his position, his power, what he's doing. Well, the Emperor's dissolved the Senate, on and on it goes. I mean, you get a sense. Then in episode 5, you actually get to see him. Not really, though, because it's just a hologram.
Hologram, right.
But you're getting a little bit more information, and now you're starting to see the dynamic between him and Vader. And then the payoff, like you said, is in episode 6, where you actually get to see him full on, and you understand exactly where his place is. So even though episodes 4, 5, and 6 are being dropped in, because again, we didn't have 1, 2, and 3. We didn't know the whole background of him being a senator, and then
Right.
how he rose to be the emperor. We didn't know any of that either. But
True.
the way that they handled it in 4, 5, and 6 with basically extreme foreshadowing, and then you get a little glimpse, and then you get the full body.
Literally.
Yeah, absolutely. You get it was so rushed because in episode 7, you get this. First of all, you get this like mountainous, super tall being or whatever, where
Right.
you're kind of like, all right.
He has like the Abe Lincoln statue sitting there talking to you.
Exactly.
It's like,
And then
all
of
right.
course, in The Last Jedi, we get the Hugh Hefner version of Snoke, where he's got, the cool little gold robe. But I mean, I really
As we see in the picture.
Yeah. I mean, I like the visuals. I like that chamber that he had. It was regal. It was colorful. It was ominous.
Lots
But
of
again,
space.
they just rush through everything, and again, you don't really get a glimpse into some of the questions that you talked about, like, well, how did they rip him away from Luke, and who
Mhm.
was he? Because they did deal with it in the Kylo Ren comic, which again, it's like, all right, you're supposed to fill in gaps with comics and books and all that stuff, not actually reveal key story points.
Right.
And the problem is that even in that comic, you're getting a sense of the manipulation that he used in order to get Kylo away from Luke, but he was just like a, I don't know, almost like a gardener or something. He was like, he wasn't even in the government.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like he just seems to have popped up out of nowhere, and he's amassed control over this whole government slash army. The First Order is like, everybody knows about them. You're running around, you got Kylo doing this bidding. And so he's very, emperor like, for obvious, we find out why. But then it's like, okay. So then now he's kind of beaten in a, don't get me, I'm not necessarily mad at the way he was beaten. I mean, I thought it was kind of clever.
Yeah, it was.
It was clever,
and it
but
showed
I felt
Kylo's
like
power too, because
but I
he
thought
was
it was
actually
too
clouding
soon.
him. That's
Right.
my point. It was
just
way
too
too
soon.
soon.
And
was
like
rushed.
if you just say that for 9, that would have been a better, like, oh, okay. And that would have been a cool way to show Kylo's turn, because he's turning on his master, much like most people turn on the other, on their master. So that would have been more befitting. But Snoke, yeah, it's just, you really didn't know his angle. There was just kind of like, all right, what are you trying to do? And I never got a sense of his plan as far as what he wanted.
Yeah, there wasn't really an end game or anything like that. They're just, I don't know. I mean, there were a lot more unanswered questions than there were answers to the questions that had been brought up in the previous film. It's like The Last Jedi was supposed to give us the answers that we had in The Force Awakens, right, to those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, all it did was leave us with more questions that now we have to try to piecemeal together. And then, if you think about it, in Episode 9, the whole JJ, bringing Palpatine back and Snoke was a clone of his or something like that, none of that even existed in the original Colin Trevorrow version.
All right.
Which, if the Colin Trevorrow version, Duel of the Fates, had been made, it probably would have even made it more obvious that Snoke was a waste. I mean, at least when they retconned it, it gave it a little bit more meaning, but not much. All right, so now the next person that we got on our list, this one's like a big one, because you wouldn't think right away that he was wasted. But when you really think about it, complete waste. And that is Boba Fett.
Yes.
I mean, Boba Fett has been a wasted character since Return of the Jedi. Because you had to establish him in The Empire Strikes Back. Now, granted, I get it. Yes, it's true. He was in the holiday special. That's where he was introduced through a little animated segment. But we didn't actually get to see him until The Empire Strikes Back. Now, granted, yes, I am aware that the special editions put him in Episode 4, in that one deleted scene between Han Solo and Jabba. I get that.
Oh, yeah.
So you could technically say there was kind of like a little bit of an intro, even though he's just like kind of standing in the corner. But we really get to see more of what he's about in The Empire Strikes Back. So we all thought that in Return of the Jedi, sweet, man, we're going to... Because again, the last we saw him, Boba Fett's the one that was taking Han Solo back to Jabba. So we thought we were going to see, well, a lot more than what we saw. Instead, we see this slapstick comedy version of Boba Fett. And then they wasted him a little bit, even in his own series.
The thing about Boba Fett is just, he looks so cool. I mean, he just looks like, let's look at this picture, man. I mean, he just looks like, almost like he looks like Master Chief from Halo, almost. Right? Like, he looks menacing. And when you hear him in Empire, and he's talking to, first of all, when Vader walks up to him, he's like, no disintegration. Like, why are you pointing at Boba? Like, he acknowledges
exactly.
the man, and like, out of all these bounty hunters, like, you single me out So that kind of made him special, even in that moment, right? And then you find out, you see, he's the one who eventually captures Han, and now you like, all right, they put him in carbonite. He takes him to Jabba, and he's even having a whole conversation with Vader, like, look, hey, if he's damaged, he's no good to me dead. He's like, well, the Empire will compensate you if he dies, and all this type of stuff. And so the fact that Boba really doesn't have any fear
Right.
is walking up to Vader, especially at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of like, okay, who is he? And then you get to Return of the Jedi, and in a somewhat of a slapstick comedy kind of way, he gets dispatched rather easily. And then when you do the research on who Boba Fett really is, he's like the greatest bounty hunter of all time. And you're like, him? The guy who just got knocked accidentally into a barge and then rolled down the sand dune into the Sarlacc pit? That guy? Really? And then you don't see anything else from him. And then when you finally do bring him back, okay, you bring him back in Mandalorian, like you always say, he's a butt kicker. I mean, he's got that mace, man. And he's going to town on people. I mean, he's like swinging
That's
for
the
the
only
fences.
time where they didn't waste him.
He's got that Goffy stick from the Sand People, and he's just, I mean, he's Tiger Woods with that thing. But then he gets his own series, and he's kind of like, well, I'm reformed. Maybe we don't do things the old way. Perhaps we should try a little diplomacy. Like, no, we didn't get to see you be, the Terminator. Like, this is who we want to see. Don't give us we don't want to see Governor Schwarzenegger. We want to see the Terminator. Give us him. So it's just such a waste of character.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, it's tough. I was going back and forth between putting him on the list because I know another character that you had suggested was Rose.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, in my mind...
But I'm glad you made that choice, though.
Yeah, because Rose... I mean, I understand. It's true.
True, absolutely.
That she was a wasted character, absolutely. You introduce 100%. Her, you make her very prominent in The Last Jedi, and then in Rise of Skywalker, she has like 3 lines, and, she really isn't doing anything. And especially because in The Last Jedi, you gave her this thing, right? It's like her sister died in this offensive against, Hux and all them, and it was like, okay, now she's like, she has a chance to shine now too, because she was just like I don't know, some sort of a technician in the basement or something. What was she doing?
She was like, somewhere around like I think she's like an engineer.
Yeah, it was exactly. She's like some sort of engineer or something. So from that standpoint, yes, you could have taken that and made it a very cool thing. But the thing is, when you compare that to Boba Fett, who is this iconic character, who was very much wasted.
Yeah,
And we were only recently introduced to Rose, but we've been hanging on to, Boba Fett for 40 years or something stupid. It just made more sense to put him on the list. But it is worth an honorable mention to say, yeah, Rose definitely fits the criteria of being a completely wasted character. But
yeah, I mean, it makes more sense, like you said, to have Boba Fett because he's iconic. And if you're going to have if you're going to have a top 5, you got to have your best players, in this case, your best worst players up front, So, yeah, totally support that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just one of those things where, again, you try to balance this out because there's a lot of different characters in the Star Wars universe that you could actually say. And you could even come back in an argument and say, look, I get what you're saying, from the standpoint of the movies and the Disney Plus shows, but Boba Fett really wasn't wasted when you factor in the old expanded universe, now Legends, and the comics. And that would be 100% correct. there is that balance. But the thing is, you have to look at it for what did they do when they introduced the character? They introduced him and all the things that you had said. His relationship with Vader, the fact that he was obviously the best and most feared and most respected of the bounty hunters.
Mm-hmm.
You establish all that in Empire Strikes Back, and then you turn him into an idiot in Return of the Jedi. Okay, then you bring him back. We're talking live action now. I mean, I know he's been brought back a million times in the comics and the books and all that. You finally bring him back, and then you have the Mandalorian, butt kicker, exactly what we want to see Boba Fett be. And then you soften him in his own series, and half the time he wasn't even, like, there was 2 episodes, it was Din. It wasn't even Boba Fett. He wasn't even in his own series. It was kind of like the whole Ahsoka Sabine
sleeping,
thing.
dreaming half
well,
the time.
That too, yeah. Like reminiscing about the Sand People, which again, I thought that was a good story arc. But the problem is they made it go on too long.
Exactly.
I didn't need like every single day,
of his recovery,
right, like Dear Diary. There was just a lot of stuff. It's like they could have actually abbreviated that, still made it just as powerful, just as important, but you didn't need the whole day in the life of the Sand People town.
Right.
And then when he is awake and he's not in his back to tank, he's walking around being like this benevolent, just
governor. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Which, I mean, again, if you wanted to put him into that, fine, but we need to see that. We need to see that development and that transition and that, just that whole arc. Like, okay, we're gonna bring you from here to this, because if you think about it, he basically was more akin to a Grief Karga type of character. That's sort of what they made Boba Fett to be like. And what's funny is, even with Grief Karga, because he was a brand new character, it made sense when you saw that he was kind of a ruthless head of the bounty hunter guild, and then he sort of has a little bit of a redemption arc, and then he becomes this benevolent governor. It makes sense. But you didn't get that with Boba Fett. And the problem is that unlike Grief Karga, you have this entire history, so you have to tell this type of story slowly. That's the kind of thing we should have seen in a season 2.
Yeah, and then like his relationship with Fennec Shan, I think there could have been more. Like if he would have showed her how to improve as a bounty hunter, and because like he's the GOAT, right?
Right.
So, and she's kind of like his apprentice / right hand. I think that would have been right. I think that would have been a great thing to even show, like, okay, this is why he's like, especially when you want to show like this is why he's feared, you see why.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, when they show Batman, he's learning like all the different martial arts and going to Europe and learn how to now you see why he's the world's greatest detective, because you see the training that he went through and the things that he put himself through. It's like, okay, I respect him as a hero now because of all the things I've seen him do. We kind of got a glimpse of that like in Mandalorian, but then nothing really much after that.
All right, so our number 2. Number 2 has got to be, well, that's why he's a number 2. One of the most wasted characters of all is Finn.
Ugh.
Here you had this brilliant story arc where you had a stormtrooper who decides that he doesn't want to participate in the atrocities that he's being ordered to do. He defects. And you could have had this entire, and they sort of did in The Force Awakens. He was hesitant to join. They kind of gave him the Han Solo thing in a way. It was like he was on the peripheral, right? He was traveling with these people, but he was a little hesitant to join their cause because he saw it as a suicide mission and he just wanted to run away. But there are so many different elements of you have this character who was once a stormtrooper who, again, defects. We have never seen anything like this before in the Star Wars universe. You could have done so much more with this. Instead, you made him a little slapsticky, actually, by the way that he was dealing with Rey and all this. It's like it was really easy halfway through the movie to forget that he even used to be a stormtrooper. Now, granted, you know, when you take Phasma's comments and everybody didn't seem to be the sharpest knife in the drawer as far as the stormtroopers go, but still.
Yeah, he's like one of those guys who barely probably made it through basic training in the military.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's why they stuck him. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the episode of The Bad Batch when they were talking about that one old guy who ended up being a custodian.
Yep.
You know, and because that's what he was in. He was in sanitation. So that was like you said, they kind of made him slapsticky. They kind of didn't make him relevant even in the Empire. I mean, the First Order.
No, and then you had this whole situation where they started to allude to the fact that he had some force powers. Maybe he wasn't a Jedi, but that he had some force powers. Right. That he was force sensitive. You know, he goes up against one of his own stormtroopers, which I thought was actually the coolest scene in The Force Awakens. Then he goes up against Kylo, which I thought was pretty gutsy.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, that'd be like a stormtrooper going up against Vader. Like on Cloud City, you know? It's just like, you know what? I'm not really into this. And he draws, he takes Luke's lightsaber and goes up against Vader. I mean, that's a crazy concept. And yet they did that here. And I thought that was a great choice. But again, and honestly, I thought the Finn-Kylo duel was better than the Rey-Kylo duel.
Yeah.
And then they really wasted him in Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Well, see, and I could understand him being naive in 7. Right? I can, okay. I think it's corny. It's like, okay, but then again, most people don't take Stormtrooper seriously anyway because they can't hit the broadside of a barn.
Well, yeah.
But, so, I mean, you really don't have that much, hope
unless you're a Death Trooper.
Unless you're a Death Trooper, but which he clearly wasn't.
No.
He was black, just the armor wasn't.
Right. He didn't have the black armor. He had the black skin.
Skin, yes.
Let me get this in from Dom, because he's trolling us again. But he has a good point. He actually has a good point. He says Rey stole his trilogy. And there's some truth to that. Because, yes, they were setting Rey up to be, the new Luke or whatever. But see, the Finn story was a way more interesting story that I think that he could have been more of a central, maybe not like, I don't necessarily think that you have to say, is this going to be Rey's trilogy or Finn's trilogy? I think they could have shared it.
I agree. So I'm going to agree with you and Dom on this because I just pondered it for a second. I think what would have been a phenomenal story is if you had people converge from two different areas who end up on the same path.
Right.
And I think that would
Rey's doing her thing, Finn's doing his thing, and then they end up converging at some point during the story.
Yeah, and exactly like so if you have Finn, who's a stormtrooper, he sees all the atrocities, he doesn't agree, it just never sat right with him. He decides to defect. He defects, and then they eventually end up on Jakku, where they run into Rey. Rey is kind of like, she's kind of a scavenger wandering around, she's trying to find her parents or whatnot. But then they kind of go on this adventure together, and they both kind of discover, like, I can feel I can feel you, but not really, and not why. And it's like they kind of had this, because they kind of had that little, I don't want to say relationship, but they kind of had that vibe with each other in a way, because they were always kind of checking in, like, where's Rey? Where's Finn?
Well, he spends half the whole trilogy screaming her name.
True story.
And not in the way he wanted to.
Right. Definitely not the way he wanted to.
It was like friend zone quick. Oh, did I
Oh,
do it again?
probably.
I think I did it again.
All right, Brittany. Uh, but I think if you would have those two characters converge and they're kind of like trying to find their new norm, so to speak, and they realize like, okay, we're both force sensitive. Hey, let's both look up for Luke, look out, or look for Luke Skywalker, so he can
Yeah,
train us.
there you go.
And then now Luke kind of comes back, trains these two to go up against Kylo and Snoke. See, that makes a better story.
Right there. We
Right
were just
there, yeah.
talking about what would happen if you and I got the call
Yeah.
because like somebody
Right.
at Lucasfilm, saw our show and said, hey, you guys, let's pull you in. You guys have any movie ideas? I mean, okay, coming up with something new might be a little bit more difficult, but we could definitely tell you how you could have made this one better.
Oh,
See,
100%.
already that's a much better plot to set up the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
And they could have had them converge in like episode 9.
Yeah, they
Because-
both kind of have their own struggles trying
Well,
to
what you do is you
figure it out.
basically introduce them both in 7, and they're going to, trying to. You basically have it to where by the end of that, Finn figures out that he's force sensitive, and so does she. And then you got episode 8, where now they have a more targeted, I'm searching for Luke.
Mhm.
And then in episode 9, they find him, he trains them for like 10 minutes, and then they go after Kylo.
Right. Now, the thing about Finn, though, and this is the other part, is that, he gets wasted because you never really, it seems like he never really grows up. See, the thing is that throughout the entire trilogy, it seems like he still remains in this very childlike mentality, because
Right.
he's still like jealous and he's all, oh, so what? Because when they get stuck, when they end up going through that old quicksand thing when they fall through and end up with the snake, he's all like arguing with Poe, like, oh, what do you think you have? What are you trying to hide, huh? What do you? And they're just still arguing, bickering with each other. It's just he's very
That's
he
because
he doesn't turn into a man, and that's the
No.
part that bothers
See,
me.
and this is what they should have done, because what you're talking about is in episode 9.
Yeah,
What they should have done was have his story culminate in that sacrifice at the end of 8, when he decides that this cause is worth dying for, and he does it. If they had killed him off in that moment, that would have been like the perfect. You could still argue that they could have done more with them, but at least that would have been a good fitting ending for that character
true.
at that moment. The
At the
fact
moment,
that they
yes.
kept him alive, and now he's in episode 9 and he's basically reverting back to what he was, that undoes everything.
Everything, yeah.
It was like that. If he had just been like, okay, this is a cause, I'm going to sacrifice my life for it, that would have been like an epic ending to that character, but they chose not to. Now, Dom basically poses an interesting question, because he's right. This new trilogy, Elder Luke count, is a wasted character. I 100% agree that he was.
Yeah. He falls into the wasted character. I don't know if you caught the beginning of the show when we were kind of trying to define all of this, but he kind of falls into that whole realm of his legacy, his reputation precedes him. And it's like, if you're going to have Luke Skywalker, especially at this point, like he's got to be Luke Skywalker. You can't, I mean, he does eventually, have that moment in 8 with the
Kind
whole.
of.
Well, I mean, you see his power.
Right.
What I'm saying.
I mean,
Like,
granted, yeah, he's projecting himself. And
you
see, to
know,
me, that would have been cool if he had actually been there, because if you had the entire Empire
now
just
that's what I thought
firing
was.
all this stuff,
Oh,
and he's
my
just
God.
basically like just
And then he
pretty
still
much
does the.
like absorbing it, and yeah,
Oh,
and then
my
just does that. See, that's what we wanted.
that's what I would.
That
Yeah,
would have
because-
been the Luke Grandmaster of the Force that we really wanted.
But all I'm going to say is that I would have felt sorry for the poor person sitting in front of me, because if that would have happened, let's just move on.
But yeah, I mean, from the way that they utilize him, absolutely, I would agree that, yes, he would count as a wasted character. Because again, another thing we brought up at the beginning of the show is that we could have done a top 10 or a top 20. Because there's actually a lot of wasted characters that they had. And I'm not talking about, and again, we sort of defined this at the beginning, because you got to be careful not to put things like unappreciated, overlooked, those kind of stipulations. You have to basically say, were they wasted? Did they have this potential to be more, and they just didn't do it? Because again, you don't want to fall into the trap of, just because you come up with somebody cool, or you bring somebody cool in from, say, the expanded universe, or maybe earlier in the films, like when they brought back Han Solo. You don't want to, just for the sake of fan service, shoehorn them into every single, scene. Now, see, Han Solo was a perfect example of giving us what we wanted.
Yeah.
They didn't waste him at all. In fact, I mean, it's funny because when you really stop and think about it, Episode 7 is the movie that he's featured in the most. He's like the focal character of that movie.
Yeah,
more so even than the trilogy.
I would say once he comes in, like once we get past the introduction of Rey and all them, he completely like.
It's his film.
It's him and Chewie. That's all we care about.
And I mean, because they were more relegated to like main side characters in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Like Return of the Jedi probably featured, well, I mean, Empire to a degree too, but they were basically like, if you really go back and forth, he was like a main side character. Luke always was the prominent one, along with Vader on the Empire side. But The Force Awakens, it was definitely Han Solo's movie. All right, so our number one. Our number one shouldn't be easy to guess if you guys have just been staring at our thumbnails the whole time. But our number one,
one of the two,
is definitely Captain Phasma. Without question. It's like, okay, in the trailers, you give us this really cool looking stormtrooper thing, and then you do the worst thing where you have your marketing department like working overtime to basically feature her in all the trailers and everything else. Then in the movie, in The Force Awakens, you give her like somewhat of a good introductory role. We see that she's really high up, that she's a very high-ranking person. We see that she's strong and that she's definitely cool, but then after that, what happens?
I'm going to say this. I'm just going to start off with the controversy. Kathleen Kennedy comes out and she's screaming to the top of her lungs, "The Force is female." And then you bring out Rey, who arguably is very powerful. Not that it was earned, per se, but nonetheless powerful. We have to accept what's there, right? And then you have, on the flip side, Captain Phasma, who at first, none of us knew was a woman.
That's true. Until she talks.
And they were like, oh, okay, this is different. First, it's not too often that you hear more than a couple of words from a stormtrooper. So now we have this super, T-1000 looking stormtrooper, chromed out, got all the bling, all right, looks phenomenal, walks around carrying a big gun. And Gwendolyn Christie is, we know her from Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. That's who's actually playing this character. So you take the time to get someone as prominent as Gwendolyn, you make her look phenomenal, and you basically have her as one of the high-ranking officials in the military because you have like Hux, and I probably is Phasma at that point. I'm guessing, or I don't think Kylo. I think Kylo kind of filled that Vader role where he's not technically a part of the military, but he could kind of use them. But the thing is, you don't show what she can do. Again, unearned. Why are you here? Why? Why? Why do we care about Phasma besides the fact that you look cool? And this is why I hate about the whole woke agenda, because essentially you're making us idolize no different than a woman in a bikini, how great of a body she has. Oh, look, a cool costume. She looks phenomenal, but is she worth anything? No, because you have nothing to show for yourself besides the fact that you look cool or you look hot.
Well, and
So
again, one of the things too that you almost have to do this contextually, and this is what drives me nuts, is the fact that one of the differences between the First Order troopers versus stormtroopers is the First Order troopers, they don't really generally miss. They're a lot more sinister and threatening. Like anytime we see them, they're doing like massacres in villages.
yeah,
Daniel Craig famously played one where, she was like, okay, when she first tried to use the old Jedi mind trick, and it's like, you will loosen these things. And he was all like, oh yeah?
what?
No, I will tighten the, like, he was just coming at her kind of hard, And then, of course, anytime that they're going to shoot people, they don't miss.
Mm-hmm.
So you think, okay, if this person being whatever is in charge of these guys, then obviously she's got to be. It's almost like one of those things that we don't have to see her in battle. It's very similar to Vader. I mean, other than the fact that we did see Vader force choking people occasionally, especially in episode 5. But if you think about it, in episode 4, it's not like we see him in any battles or actually doing anything until the end. But we know, like, okay, this guy obviously probably has some power and influence because of the way the other characters are interacting with him.
Well, the fact that, after the first scene, he walks in, he like has a guy dangling, by his one arm.
Right. Like I said, the force choking thing and all that stuff, we see a little bit of that personal power.
Yeah.
But, we hear all these things about it, we never actually see them. And I kind of see Phasma the same way. It's really more on how these other characters that we have seen in battle and doing their thing, and this is their leader.
And which makes it even more terrible when you get beat by the sanitation guy.
Yeah, right. Like the whole battle in 8. I mean, it was so anticlimactic because actually, when Finn faced off against that other stormtrooper, the one that was like, traitor.
Well, I'm not even talking about 8. I'm still talking about
not.
7.
Oh,
I'm talking about when
7?
you end up in the trash compactor.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. She did fall into the trash.
Yeah, it's just like... Again, like, once again, you didn't put up a fight. Like, you're supposed to be...
You know what? But you know where I can actually excuse that more so than 8? Because 8, she does put up a fight. I can excuse it because she thought that Finn was so worthless and harmless that I don't think she really expected much. So I think that he got her basically in 7 anyway, based on more of a underestimating the power kind of a thing. Whereas 8, even though his victory was a little cheesy in 8 too, really.
Yeah, I just think that all of it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it just at no point did she prove herself to be worthy.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Everything has to be inferred or in context with something else. We don't actually see why. And again, they could have used her in so many different things. Like we could have had her hunting him down in episode 9. I mean, it could have just been really cool. Dom says every stormtrooper with a rifle is a waste because they die before they hit a shot. And yeah, the original trilogy stormtroopers, absolutely. These guys, the sequel trilogy ones, No,
Not so much.
no, not so much. Those guys actually earn it kind of the same way that some of the like clone troopers were pretty deadly. Then when you move into the early days of the Empire, where you had the Death Troopers, you had some of the Stormtroopers there too, because those guys were. It's really only George Lucas's stuff where you basically see that, where it's kind of like the A-Team in space. But I mean, I thought that was really a good comprehensive list of what is probably the most wasted characters. Now, you guys might actually have different characters. Like, we actually brought up Rose, Dom brought up Luke, like Elder Luke.
Mhm.
I brought up Black Chrysanthemum in the beginning of the show.
Mhm.
Maybe not like super wasted, but I thought that they probably could have done more with him considering they brought him in. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I mean, I arguably would have liked to have seen more of Bosk and IG-88.
Jar Jar is kind of a wasted character.
Yeah, now see, that's probably a different definition, because what we're talking about is characters that they brought in but could have done more, like the underutilized, like you said. The Jar Jar thing probably is like just wasting our time and movie time, right? Like,
Well, I would at first, yes.
I mean, unless you're talking about you think they could have utilized him more, because
He
especially
was close
given
to
the fact,
He was close to Padme, and he ended up becoming her replacement in the Senate for that vote. That's
right? So
where I was saying,
he's the
like,
one that actually voted Palpatine into power, which means they could have
exactly.
dealt with, hey, look what you did.
Yeah, you're back to your bonehead ways again. But I think if you would have showed his growth, and if you would have shown that, okay, he was this bumbling idiot, but then now you've put him around, people who can actually help him and develop him. So now he's like, okay, he started becoming a little bit more cooler because of course, they cut half his lines, so he had no choice. But
And he
he
had
seemed
no line.
more,
You saw him in Revenge of the Sith, but he didn't have a single line. But you're
yeah. But I
right.
mean,
He
like,
was a lot more tolerable in Attack of the
yeah, and he was
Clones.
like, and she was like, my lady. Like, he was very diplomatic. He was,
Mm-hmm.
he was a little bit more gracious, and he started to assimilate to his new environment. And I think that would have been like a cool thing to do if you're going to keep him around. Then utilize him in a way that's like, especially if you're going to have him be the one that votes, make the vote count.
Man, there's a big part of me that almost wishes that he had been the Sith Lord behind
Other Sith
everything.
Lord.
Like that whole like theory.
Yeah, the whole Darth
Which
Binks or
is
whatever.
actually really compelling. I mean, when you actually watch the initial video that presented that idea and the
Hmm.
evidence that's actually in the movies.
Yeah,
Because if you
it
think
is.
about it, you're right. It was his vote that voted
Hmm.
Palpatine in. Like, if he was really the Sith Lord above Palpatine, even that was really pulling all the strings, that would have been kind of cool and very unexpected.
Yeah, that would have been a plot twist for you.
Yeah, that would have put like everything in a whole different light. But see, that's the thing. They wouldn't do something like that. But there's like, I mean, you can make the argument, because the other thing too is just like what you're saying with Jar Jar, right? You can actually look at some of the other main characters and go, well, let's take a second look at those guys and see, were they really utilized to their full potential? And you might
Hmm.
come up with a few that are like, you know what, maybe not. By the way, did we talk about the death of the guy that played, oh man, I think it was Piet. Yeah,
Oh,
the guy that played Admiral
Admiral
Piet.
Piet? No.
Yeah. Okay, well he died last week, I think, at the age of 87, I believe. Kind of forgot his name, but I always thought the Piet character was awesome.
Yeah.
And he was actually very cool. They showed him in some of the like conventions and stuff, like clips and everything, and he was really into it and really cool.
I wonder if they would bury him in like his, Imperial
Oh, the
uniform.
Admiral? That would be cool. Tom says, Rey is such a wasted character. She took the whole trilogy with her.
You ain't lie about that.
Yeah, well, we're not exactly the biggest Rey fans, so you don't have to worry about that. All right. We basically gave our top 5 wasted characters. In the comments section, let's hear what you guys think were the wasted characters. Didn't I put up a poll, or was that for last week's topic? Yeah, it was last week's topic. Yeah, maybe I'll... well, no, that'd be kind of tough to put up a poll. Yeah, just do it in the comments section.
Or just put up, if you got a top 5, who would you put?
Yeah. Yeah, give us your top 5. Put it in the comments section. Of course, you can join us at Head to Head SW on our Facebook, Instagram. We have the Head to Head of Star Wars Community Facebook group that people post in frequently. Of course, we have Discord. I mean, there's no shortage of ways that you guys can let us know what you're thinking. And again, there's the comments section here. Of course, wouldn't be a YouTuber if I didn't say don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And because of our schedule a lot of times, you're definitely going to want to hit the notification bell so that way you'll know exactly when we're going on live. All right. What do we have? Because there was a couple of, this is one of the topics. There was another topic, though, that we were floating last week that we said would be cool, and I don't remember what it is. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Well, all right.
This is the one from last week I remember, but yeah.
Well, this is a good one. I thought this was a really fun topic to do, so I was glad that we were able to do it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it just as much. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.